Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. Today I am launching a new series where I'm going to be recommending some of the coolest games within the roguelite genre that I've discovered recently. Before I get into it, I'm going to spend a minute here defining exactly what makes a game a roguelite and not a roguelike, as many people seem to confuse the two, as well as briefly explaining what has got me so obsessed with the genre that I am constantly looking for new examples to try. In the classic game Rogue, whenever you died, you would lose absolutely everything. No currency, levels, skills or any other kind of progress would transfer forward. Each run was its own distinct thing and you could easily fall afoul of bad RNG. In more recent times, games such as The Binding of Isaac, Rogue Legacy and the like came along, where you would either unlock new items that would appear in future runs, or you could spend any gold earned in your last run on permanently beefing up your stats and therefore making the chances of survival just a little bit greater than last time. A really great roguelite should feel like a challenge while never quite being frustrating enough to make you want to give up permanently. That carrot on a stick of always getting a fraction more powerful, combined with your own skill at the game getting better over time, can prove to be a really addictive formula. There are two games that I hold responsible for my current addiction to roguelikes. The first is Bros, which I played through from beginning to end on my Evercade and loved every minute of. It's a 2D side-scrolling dungeon crawler with randomised layouts and weapons, prisoners to free who also then open up services back at your camp, and a dozen or so bosses to beat. For me the difficulty level was pitched just about right, as my runs typically didn't last very long at the beginning, but I was still having fun exploring and unlocking new features gradually. With a bit of practice and better equipment, you will gradually start taking those bosses down and making progress. It's not a very long game, coming in at about 8 to 10 hours I would say, but I felt satisfied with it when I had finished it and it remains my absolute favourite game on the Evercade to date. Fresh from beating Bros, I then turned my attention to Hades on the Switch, which I bought when it was released on the eShop and had bounced off after an hour or two. My play sessions were mostly reserved to my twice weekly commute home from London, so it did take me quite some time to work my way through the entire game and see the ending, several months at least. This game doesn't really need much explanation as it remains the shining example of the genre to this day, and it managed to push things forward by successfully working a strong narrative into the roguelite structure. After each attempt of defeating Hades, be it failure or success, a little bit of story would be drip-fed to you via conversations with the pantheon of gods and other immortals who feature in the game. Other games have done a similar thing, and I'm going to be featuring one such game in this video, one that actually predates Hades by almost a year in fact. Children of Morta was originally released back in 2019 by the indie developer Dead Mage, and right from the start it grips you with its fantastic narration, delivered by voice actor Ed Kelly.
When all was thought lost, when the struggle was becoming too heavy a burden, a young voice cried out. Stifling his sobs, the small boy spoke of his mother. She was not far away, and returning to her was his only need.
It tells the story of the Bergson family, who have lived in the shadow of Mount Morta for generations, and are tasked with holding back the corruption that threatens the region and the world. Every member of this family, from the elderly grandmother to the unborn baby inside Mary, has a part to play in the story. They are the true definition of heroes, quietly venturing away from the safety of their warm homestead in order to do battle against dark forces with little to no thanks or recognition. They do so because it must be done, and they take strength in their strong family bond and the quiet times between runs when they play with their pets and spend some quality time with each other. At first you will only have a few options for characters you can choose from. John, a slow but strong character who wields a sword and shield, and the nimble Linda who wields a bow and plays very differently, as instead of mashing an attack button you can use twin stick shooter controls. Failure is actually a key part of progressing in Children of Morta, as additional members of the family become unlocked after so many failed attempts. Eventually you will have a total of 7 different family members to choose from, each quite different from each other mechanically. It's tempting to stick to the one that gels with your own playstyle, but the developers have a couple of game mechanics that actively discourage you from doing that. Firstly, after a few hours into the campaign, the concept of corruption is introduced. If you take one character out for too many runs in a row, or you have one particularly lengthy run before dying, your character will become corrupted, which means that their stats are diminished. This will heal naturally over time as long as you leave them at home and play as someone else. Going hand in hand with that are various passive buffs that will be applied to the whole family when you reach a certain level with each individual member. Therefore, to be the strongest you can be, you should at least play with each Bergson enough to unlock these buffs. I hadn't maxed out any of the characters all the way by the time I managed to defeat the final boss, but I had levelled each one quite a way into their own skill tree. The main campaign takes roughly 14 or so hours to beat, though it personally took me 18, and there is a harder New Game Plus option unlocked once you do so if you want to continue levelling your characters. In addition to this, there was an update to the game that added a new mode called the Family Trials, which is an even more hardcore roguelite mode. This time all of your skills are unlocked at the start, and a whole new tree of unlockable abilities is made available to you. Progress is far slower and harder going than the main story though, as the criteria for unlocking these abilities are each quite time consuming. Things such as levelling up 30 times with each individual Bergson, slaying 500 vicious enemies which are like elites from Diablo, or beating all 13 levels of the randomised dungeon with all 7 characters. Narration and the story is absent from this mode, so it is really there for those who just want to play more Children of Morta. A lot more. I'm not sure I'm going to continue with this mode too much more than I have done already, as it is quite the time sink, and to be honest, the random dungeons are unfortunately the weakest aspect of the game. There are only 3 real biomes to speak of: creepy caves, desolate deserts, and mechanical mazes, and they each start to feel very samey after a while. It's just enough to sustain the length of the standard campaign mode, but I grow tired of the same environments in the Family Trials mode. Nevertheless, I still feel that I've definitely got my money's worth out of the game already, especially as I picked up the complete edition for only a few quid in a sale. If this one has passed you by, then I definitely recommend picking it up for yourself. Moving on now, our next game dates all the way back to the year 2017 on Steam, where it was originally called Monolith, but it was recently renamed Star of Providence and released on the Nintendo Switch, which is where I picked the game up. Given the retro pixel art style of the game, the Switch has absolutely no issues at all running it, which does sometimes affect my decision of whether I will play a game on the Steam Deck or Nintendo's aging console. Of course, with the Switch 2 just around the corner and the knowledge that it will be backwards compatible, it actually doesn't matter too much, but it is nice to be able to buy it right now and get stuck in without having to worry about this sort of thing. Star of Providence does feature a few different control options in the menu, but I would personally recommend switching strafe mode on straight away, which means that the game will behave like a normal twin-stick shooter from that point onwards. Your goal is to take your little ship character and dive down through the various levels of a procedurally generated dungeon, while beating mini-bosses, finding upgrades and more powerful weaponry. This being a roguelite, that is easier said than done of course, and it will take many runs to beat the game, let alone unlock and see everything it has to offer. I've personally put about 10 or so hours into the game so far, and I'm just scratching the surface really. The game has received consistent feature updates and improvements over the years, which means those just picking it up now will have a truly gargantuan task before them. This is a very addictive game to play, and it is hard to resist the pull of playing just one more run, so you can earn enough scrap to buy the next thing you have your eye on in the shop. Each dungeon floor is also crammed with secret areas located behind destructible walls, hackable doors or special vault doors that require you to locate a key before you can open them, so it is worth scouring every single room in order to be powered up as you possibly can, before facing the various mini and stage end bosses, of which there are many different ones, so you never really know which one you're going to face on any given run. This game truly does remind me of The Binding of Isaac in the context of just how much stuff is crammed into it. Not so much the style or the controls though, which are very different. Star of Providence also features a great catchy soundtrack that will have you bopping along as you play. This game has been one of my favourite discoveries of the year so far, and it's a great one to pull out if you have an hour or so where you just want something that's quick to get into and play. I was scanning through a bulleted list of features in the game though, and there's many things I have yet to even see, so it'll take many more hours to exhaust everything in this one. If you like the look of it, you should really grab this for yourself. Our final game for this episode is Raven's Watch, developed by Past Tech Games and published by Nacon in 2024. This one has some unique features that I have not seen in the roguelike genre before, such as a hard time limit for each run that will plunge you into a boss fight once it expires, whether you are ready or not. This is more like something you might see in a survivors game, which is closely connected to roguelikes admittedly. Instead of maze-like dungeons, you're also exploring quite large open areas, so large in fact that you won't have enough time to explore every inch of them before your time runs out. Your task as a member of the titular Raven's Watch is to head out and explore, slay random enemies and complete various encounters so that you are hopefully leveled up enough to prove victorious by the end. The Raven's Watch itself is comprised of various well-known characters from folktales and fables, such as Little Red Riding Hood, who it also turns out is the big bad wolf and transforms every night, giving her two very distinct sets of abilities, Geppetto, who can throw out an army of little automatons who get repaired and fight faster if he hits them, and the Pied Piper, who can summon a horde of rat helpers. This is just a few of them, and they all play quite distinctly from each other. I found Little Red Riding Hood quite hard to play as, especially as she is the first option you can pick from, and so might be considered as the main star of the game. Each character has their own unique quirks to get a handle on, and it is a lot of fun trying out each one. As you successfully beat the first area with the first 4 characters, you will unlock another 4, and then if you defeat the stage with all 4 of those, you unlock a 9th. The developers aren't done adding new characters to the game either. Very soon Romeo and Juliet will join, with the promise of another character after that, even further down the line. I do think that Shakespeare characters are a bit out of keeping with the rest of the cast. I would have expected a boy and girl pairing to be Hansel and Gretel, given the subject matter, but never mind. So far Raven's Watch hasn't quite got its hooks into me in quite the same way as Star of Providence, but I do enjoy the dark, creepy vibes and the idea of a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen type organisation for various characters from folktales. I've been playing on the Steam Deck where the game runs really well, but I did also discover that the game has been released on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X as well. I'm not sure if the console versions receive the updates as quickly as the Steam version does, so if that's something you're concerned about, then maybe just stick to the PC version. I look forward to seeing how the game continues to change and develop over the coming months, and to put some more time into the varied cast until I get the hang of all the different playstyles. That concludes this initial roundup of cool roguelites that I've been playing recently. I'm continually trying out more here and there as I find them, so I'll most likely be more volumes in the future. In the meantime, thanks for watching and take care.